What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin coming to you from the Big Blue Nation once again. And today, I was going to show you how to transplant an Agave parryi. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since I've last submitted a video. Christmas, and actually, my nephew was born on Christmas Day. So I had that miracle. Nice surprise. We weren't expecting it at all. And I've just been dealing with everything else. So now that I am back, just got this pot from Myers. It's actually called an airstone kind of pot, and funny, it kind of breathes similar to terracotta. Always make sure that you sanitize your pots, even if you get them from a store that has them on the inside, because they can be dirty. If anything else has ever gotten in there or anything, you can spread diseases. So make sure you sanitize it with warm soap and water. But this guy doesn't have a drainage hole in it. It's got a plug. I can punch that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that because I've already sanitized this. And I'm gonna get my Craftsman and just hold it still. And just make sure it kind of goes all the way through, that there aren't too many big plastic pieces that can kind of get in the way and slow water down. These plants, the agave, they don't like too much moisture, so I do kind of want to make sure that water is going to be able to flow freely and from kind of an even source. For instance, if it had kind of like little pegs that would support it, you want to make sure that you would even punch a hole down in there so water doesn't kind of stand there and get stagnant. Alright, now all I've done is I've taken my agave and I've kind of given it a nice, firm, yet hard squeeze. You want to loose up any of this dirt that's really compacted. I mean, these plants have sat in here for months probably. They do get pretty tough. I'm sure they go without water for a while too, being kind of desert plants. Most people aren't sure on what to give it and don't want to kill it. So they'll often remain dry for long periods of time. And then that's just a harder, you're going to have to work and make sure that you actually can get this out without actually killing the plants. Well, as you can see, the roots are pretty dry. Doesn't look like this guy's had any kind of water in the past couple of weeks. The soil is a little bit wet at the top, so I would say I bought this guy a week or two ago, and I haven't given it any water. So I'm sure he did have a nice big drink, since most of the soil is pretty wet. But these roots down here, there's a lot of soil missing. So that just tells me that it wasn't really planted with the best substrate, and that, no, okay, I thought I saw some crawling on there, but no, we're good. This plant is clean. And I do actually have a trash can under here that I'm just kind of loosening up the soil and emptying it down here into the trash can. Not just doing this all over my floor. But yeah, this is a pretty nice root ball. These roots down here are pretty hard and crispy. You just kind of want to gently loosen this up. Kind of give the roots a bit of a chance to kind of spread out a bit. And also, if you've noticed, I chose a pretty shallow pot. It's not really that tall. It's not really that deep. Alright, and just like with the pot, you want to make sure that you do sanitize your pruning shears. From the last time I've cut on another plant, you don't want to spread any kind of diseases between the two. So you can sanitize it with warm water and soap. And all I'm going to do is just kind of trim down the larger ones, or excuse me, the longer ones. And remember what I said earlier, you can remove about up to 3/4 of your roots without actually causing considerable harm to the plant. So just kind of trim it like you would some hair. Alright guys, well unfortunately I had a slight little mishap with my computer, or excuse me, my camera, as I was planting and doing some trimming of the roots. So you didn't get to see me add in all the soil. Never fear, it's not hard to do. All you need to do is just kind of, as you're adding soil, just kind of take your 2 little fingers, or however many you can fit down in there, and kind of tamp the soil down and kind of compact it. Now you don't want to use brute force and actually kind of hurt the roots, but you do want to add a little bit of pressure and kind of pack it down in there. A lot of air bubbles down in the soil can actually cause harm to the roots. And if you'll notice, you can actually see now my agave, it looks like it's on a hill. I didn't really intend for that to happen, it just kind of did. I actually kind of like it. So if this really comes from having maybe about too much soil on the bottom. So the plant really wasn't able to kind of decompress and smooth out, but over time, gravity, it will kind of compact more, and the leaves will kind of decompact or kind of spread out and kind of look better, if you will. Now, like I said, I actually like it, and if yours turns out similar to this because you don't have a really deep pot or you didn't trim a lot of the roots off, what you can do is you can go to Lowe's or Walmart or any hobby shop and get you some of the smaller rocks, kind of like pond pebbles or something, but a little bit smaller, and just kind of fill in this gap here with the rocks, and that will actually make it look a little bit better. So you do have that option, and I do still kind of see a little bit of roots remaining on top, so I do want to kind of add some soil over there and cover those guys. Just a couple sticking out won't be too bad. But you do want to make sure that a lot of the roots do have some kind of substrate over it. Now, this is, as I mentioned, Agave parryi. It's got that Y in there, it kind of throws me off. But yeah, it's Agave parryi. Agave americana is actually quite larger than this. It will stretch out and actually have kind of a 6-foot wingspan. Agave parryi, Perry's agave, it will be a little bit smaller, have about a 3-foot kind of width to it. Now that's still considerably large, so you probably wouldn't be able to keep it in your house or let alone in your room. So as they do get bigger, they tend to become more outside plants, just because people don't really have a whole lot of space for them. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, these plants are native to the deserts of Mexico and then New Mexico and Arizona. So they're not too well adjusted to cold life. Now, it does get cold down there in the wintertime, but theirs are a lot more temperate than ours are here in Kentucky. We do kind of have a mild winter. They do get kind of rough sometimes, but not too often. I know some agave you can actually keep outside in Kentucky, but Agave parryi and Americana would not make it. Now, the flowering season for agave is the summertime. Any kind of exposure, sun exposure, you want to make sure that this plant, if it's inside, is in a south-facing window. And that's really the only kind of light source that it's going to be able to withstand indoors, unless you use artificial light. But any kind of windows, you're going to do better with a southern-facing window. East, west, or north, it wouldn't stand a chance. It really wouldn't. Maybe in the wintertime for a couple of months, just because the plant is kind of dormant. But yeah, I really wouldn't tempt it. You know, I've actually had this guy under artificial light. I have LEDs now, and that's a lot better than my high pressure sodium. Now that was kind of expensive with a light bill, but my LED, I've actually noticed a pretty significant kind of decrease with my electricity. So I do like that, and they don't get as hot, so I don't have to worry about burning my plants per se, though you can actually do that, so you do need to be careful. My agave seems to have been adjusted just fine. I've had him, like I said, about 2 or 3 weeks now. Got him right before Christmas. He's a beautiful plant. I just love that stunning color and the contrast. I really like the light kind of bluish green with the kind of purplish points at the end. Now be careful, these guys, they bite and they do hurt. And don't let these smaller ones fool you, because if they get a hold of you, you'll know it. They will break off in your skin and kind of leave a little sheath down in there and kind of make you itch and burn a little bit actually for a little bit of time. Now, if this is a problem and you seem to poke yourself a lot, or it's kind of in an area where passerbyers might get hit, use fingernail clippers and kind of trim these up. It won't hurt the plant. You don't have to worry about going into a cuticle or any kind of quick or anything to make the plant bleed. But you do not want to go too far, just enough to kind of blunt the tip, so to say, kind of make it less painful. Other than that, there really isn't a whole lot of maintenance with these plants, and that's one reason why I love cacti and succulents, just because there's not really a whole lot you have to do for them. Now, if you've noticed, I've got a lot of plants, so I typically do have to water a lot. do a lot of maintenance, trimming, pruning, all kinds of stuff, spraying, planting, transplanting, and all that kind of comes with the hobby. But these guys, they don't require a lot of attention. I mean, as long as he gets 8 hours of sunlight a day, he could probably take about 6 actually and be just fine. But as long as they get about 8 hours, they're going to do their best. Like I said, they do like a lot of light. You can use your artificial lights. I've had him underneath high pressure sodium for a couple of days, did just fine. Now I've got him under his LEDs, and I think he likes that better just because it is a cleaner, a little bit more crisper light, but he's adjusted quite well. I actually had spider mites on a plant that wasn't too far from him, and as I've kind of looked around, I haven't seen any webs or anything. I've washed him off, washed the other plant off and sprayed it down, and I think I've kind of nipped that one in the bud, but fingers crossed. Spider mites aren't too fun, though they are kind of one of the easier pests to deal with. Typically, if you do notice a pest and you want to take care of it kind of an organic way, what you really should do is kind of take your plants and sit them in the bathtub and turn your sprayer on and kind of rinse them off. If you do kind of have like a spray kind of setting, this will kind of mimic rain, and that's really what plants do in the wild. Mother Nature kind of comes along and soaks them and knocks off any kind of pests that are on there, and they're fine. But unfortunately in your house, they don't have that option. Plants are totally dependent on us, and they will need you to kind of simulate that for them and rinse them off. A lot of that moving water will knock it off quickly, and the bugs or pests just won't even be able to stick around. And just for added reassurance, you can take some insecticidal soap and kind of shake it up and then spray the plant. Make sure you get underneath the leaves as well, along with down in any kind of crevices that you can see. Now this guy, you do kind of want to spread maybe just a tiny little bit and make sure you can get the spray down in there, but as it opens, you'll be fine. And you can kind of pay attention as it does open. If you do see any kind of pests or anything kind of webbish or a little pest crawling around it, just you know, use your brain and do what feels natural. Like I said, spray it off with water and add any kind of insecticide soap if you want to go in an organic way. Now, I've discussed light. And like I was saying, in the summertime, you want these guys to stay outside. In direct sunlight, make sure that they are going to get at least 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. Realistically, you would want to kind of aim for 8 hours of direct sunlight. If you can get that, the better. So if not, 6 will do, but you will be better off at about 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. Wintertime, as I was saying, a southern facing window will suffice. Water, you want to, in the summertime, not water this plant at all. I mean, you got to think about where they come from, the desert. They don't get water often, and if you're coming around giving it a bunch, you're actually going to hurt the plant. Number one, they're not physically able to process a whole lot of water like that, so you'll end up drowning the roots out, causing root rot and bringing all kinds of pests on that way. And you'll also just kind of wash off any kind of nutrients that the plant has kind of saved, and you will kill the plant. So make sure you don't give the plant a whole lot of water. Now, if it's been about a month and you haven't had any rain, I would give the plant maybe water twice in a month. If it's really, really hot up to 100 degrees in a week and you haven't had it in a month, I would try to aim for maybe once a week to give it just about a cup, maybe 2 cups of water for a plant this size. But other than that, if you live in an area with the kind of environment that I have, we do get a lot of rain in the spring and summertime. So you will kind of need to give it added security or added shelter to make sure that the water doesn't keep running down into it. Now, you don't want to just kind of block it off because that will kind of hinder the sun, but you can use some kind of screen that will actually help it. Make sure that water isn't going to come rushing down from anywhere and water it off. That will defeat the purpose. But these plants have been used by humans and kind of domesticated for about 9,000 years, give or take a year or two. So the agave is quite popular with us. Though it isn't a very popular houseplant, I believe kind of in the late 2010s, around that area, a lot more interior designers have started to use it. I mean, they really do kind of have that simplistic yet sophisticated look to them, really sleek and slender, yet beautiful colors. I really do like this one a lot. And typically I don't care a whole lot about succulents. I do like them and do have a bunch, but I love my cacti a lot. And this guy has got some sharp teeth. My fiance actually considers me to be a little bit of a masochist from living with these kind of creatures. As I was saying, I do get bit a little bit, so it comes with the territory. Now, and I believe the nickname of this plant is actually called a century plant. It's actually a misnomer. People said they flowered once in their lifetime, kind of right before they died. That these plants would live about 100 years, and then they would flower, and that would kind of be the last act of the flower, or excuse me, of the plant. It would send up a ginormous, huge flower stalk, and then after it's kind of released seeds and everything, the plant would die. Realistically, these plants live to be about 20, anywhere from 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years old, and they'll send up their stalk. Some of them, some species will actually flower more than once, but a large majority of them will only flower one time and then die. And interesting enough, these leaves of these agave are actually pretty thick and kind of sturdy. The fibrous tissue, I believe that's called a sisal fiber, and that's derived from the agave kind of Sicilian plant. I believe what we can focus on next is kind of the soil or the substrate. And if you remember, I use my Miracle-Gro, the cactus, succulent, and citrus plant, just because there's a lot of sand in this. And this will actually help water kind of release and not be held onto as much. These plants do not like a lot of water, so you don't want it to actually retain any. You want to put some drainage hose down in there and let the water kind of escape. So any kind of soil that has clay or anything of that kind of sort will hold on to water for a long time and actually kill this plant. So you do want to make sure that the soil does have some sand in there. If you're making your own, you can use most kind of potting soil. Just make sure it doesn't have any kind of clay or anything else that will actually hold on to water. And just add your own sand. I'd say about 3 parts potting soil to about 1 part sand. 3 or 4 parts potting soil to 1 part sand. And use builder's sand, because that's been filtered and cleaned and is actually kind of a finer sand, so it will actually not really harm the plant. It is a little bit better for it. They also like kind of a slightly acidic soil, so if you're making your own, you kind of want to aim for about a 5 to a 5.5 pH. Repotting, you want to kind of make sure you can do that in the spring, though it really isn't a big deal. They say you want to pot in the spring, kind of right before the plant wakes up. I don't really know why. You can kind of really transplant plants nowadays at any time. Like I said, this guy's been indoors where it's been nice and warm. He's got artificial light, so he's a little dormant, but not really. It's really not going to hurt him. So you can repot anytime, though it is kind of better to keep your plants kind of together as you do it. It's easier on you. So not really. I've got about 150 plants, and if I tried to group them all together into when I needed to transplant them, I would be planting for about a week or 2 or a month. I do have a lot. Though all of them wouldn't need to be planted, but it still would be fun. And then it was in an 8-inch pot. I got a 10-inch pot. So anytime you do plant, you do want to make sure you go one size larger at least, but you don't want to get too big. At most, you want to go to a second one. So like I said, this was an 8. Now it's in a 10-inch pot, so I wouldn't go any higher than that. If you give a lot of space down in here, water will kind of fill in, and it really could kind of just drown the plant out, because then you've got more soil and substrate that can hold on to more water, and that just wouldn't do the plant any good. So you do want to keep it a little compact. Most plants, like cacti and succulents, like to be root bound. They don't need a whole lot of space with added nutritious substrate, so you do want to keep it kind of small if you can. And if you don't feel like repotting it into a larger pot, what you can do is just kind of pull the plant out, loosen it, and then use your pruning shears and remove up to 3/4 of the actual root ball, and it wouldn't cause any harm to the plant. And then you can just put it right back down into its same old pot, just as long as the top hasn't really kind of overgrown it. But you do kind of want to trim up the roots and make sure that the bottom of the plant is able to fit in there comfortably. A lot of times what I'll just do is kind of go back in over the springtime and add a whole bunch of new soil to the plant. That way it does kind of give it a little bit more nutrients. But don't forget, it's a desert plant, so these guys thrive on neglect. They don't need to be fed a whole lot. If you do feed it, I would give it maybe kind of a fertilizer for like tomatoes. It is a foliage plant though, so I would give it something that does have more nitrogen in there, because that kind of focuses better on the foliage plants. So any kind of fertilizer that does have maybe a little bit higher nitrogen instead of the potassium, or any kind of fertilizer that's higher in the nitrogen instead of the potassium and the phosphorus, because the nitrogen is better for a foliage plant. Temperature. Now, the minimum winter temperature, I wouldn't let this plant get any colder than about 45 degrees. After that, you can let it be subjected to kind of freezing temperatures for a couple of nights, maybe 3 or 4 at the most, and this plant might make it, but not for long. If it's going to be more than that, I would bring the plant inside and kind of keep it warm. You can actually put it in your garage or your basement, but if you do kind of keep it cool, you don't want to give it a whole bunch of light and a whole bunch of water, because then the plant will actually go dormant for its winter. But like I said, I've kept mine inside. It's rather warm and it gets light and water, so it's not going to go dormant right now. Other than that, I think that's really about it. All I really know about the agave. Like I said, I've had one before, but it wasn't this kind. It was a little bit smaller, and that was before I left for college, so I don't really recall what happened with that plant. But I know this isn't my first. Now, I have been kind of sitting here and removing kind of the dead leaves. As they come in new, they're going to be at the top of the plant, so the ones on the bottom are going to be your older leaves, the ones that have been kind of subjected to more damage. So these leaves, they can turn yellow and kind of a brown color and kind of fall off, or you can just rather pull them off. It really won't hurt the plant. Though once you do kind of pull the leaves off, they can kind of leave some scarring on the core, and so just be kind of prepared for that. Some people say it's unsightly, some people say it's kind of like battle scars for the plant. I'm not really worried about it. I do think that the yellow and brown leaves are kind of unsightly, so I will remove them. And actually, you wouldn't have to worry about the plant kind of adding or spending some of its much needed valuable energy and resources on kind of keeping a leaf that's going to be dead in a couple of days kind of hydrated or anything like that. So the faster you can remove it, the better. Like I said, some of these plants on the bottom, you can see a little bit of yellow. Now I won't remove that or cut it off. I'll wait until it does get pretty brown and yellow, and then I will just kind of loosen it up and pull it off. But once they do get to a certain state, you're able to move them easier and just kind of remove them. Now, I know that this plant can struggle with spider mites. As I was saying, that you can kind of use a spray and kind of knock that off with water and add any kind of insecticidal soap to it. Mealybugs are another problem, kind of like they're kind of telltale signs of those tufts with the white powder residue kind of looking around. So spider mites you can tell with the webs, and mealybugs you can tell because they're kind of really small, powdery looking, white. You can kind of knock them off with water, but not really. What's better with those is if you take like a washcloth and pour isopropyl alcohol on there and kind of wipe them off with that. That will remove them. And then also with the spider mites, you could even use double-sided tape and kind of plant it down in there under the leaves. The bugs will get stuck on that and won't be able to remove themselves. So you can remove that. But as I've said, I found the best way is to kind of hose off the plant. I don't think that these plants struggle with scale at all. If you do know if they do struggle with scale, leave that down in the comment and let me know. But other than that, I would appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up, or leave a comment, hit the like button, and in your comments let me know any kind of agaves that you've had, any kind of success or failures with them. Other than that though, this is a beautiful plant. I hope you guys enjoyed my video, and don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. Well guys, you have a good one. I hope everyone had a happy holidays and has a great start to your 2019. Have a good one guys. Play it prudently. Take it easy.